And we're back. Breath of Fresh Controversy Podcast. My name is Zach. We're here again with Kiara and ZP for part 2 of the 2020 Madness catch-up podcasts. So, the first, part 1, we really addressed the big elephant in the room as far as what is going on with 2020, and that is COVID. This time we are going to be tackling the other large event that has been going on for the first half of the year, and that is the Black Lives Matter protests and all the madness with that. So let's get into it. ZP, let's start off with you this time. So what do you think is going on, man? What's your opinion on everything that's happening?
I'm kind of divided on the whole issue. So on the one hand, I've had several students who have been targeted by kind of this, I'm going to call it how I see it. Some malicious intent around their social media, right? I've seen one student in particular I'm thinking of, all he said was, I support the first responders who are responding to everything that's happening in downtown Milwaukee, right? Then he got reported to the university for having said stuff that was against Black Lives Matter. There was a full investigation. He almost got kicked out of the university over it, all because he said, I support the first responders. And the students were saying that they thought that that was racist because he wasn't supporting the rioters and their issues around Black Lives Matter. And then I've seen another student who almost got kicked out because she said that she supports Trump in the upcoming election, right? And whether I support the man or not, that doesn't really matter. Like, you shouldn't be kicked out of a university for having a political opinion, right? The university is supposed to be this place where discourse and dialogue happens, and if we're censoring that dialogue and we're censoring what people are saying and we're not allowing for a diversity of opinion, then we're really not doing any justice for our students.
Then it becomes indoctrination and dogma if everything's one-sided.
Exactly.
Right? It becomes no better than sending your kids to a private Christian school. What would you expect? Right? Like, I don't expect them to be learning about Islam when I send my kids to a private Christian school, or Buddhism, right? So, to your point, we don't want the universities to become a place that becomes almost the reverse of that, where it's indoctrinating people on only one side of the issues. The university is this place where discourse has to happen, and it's a place of learning. It's a place of learning both sides. And there's a great value to that, and there's a lot of people I know we listen to, quite a few people that talk on this kind of stuff. There's a lot of value to understanding your opponent, right? There's a lot of value. There's a great thinker, Eric Weinstein, came up with the term. Everyone's kind of heard of the straw man argument, right? Making your opponent's argument sound weak and breakable like a straw man. But he coined make a steel man argument, right? And that is, make your opponent's argument as strong as it possibly can be. Make it like as hard as steel, right? Make it something very, very difficult to break. And so there's a lot of utility to that, right? Because if you make your opponent's argument so that as strong as it can be, one of two things happens. You either learn a way to articulate your argument better, right? Or you learn something new, right?
Well, exactly.
You realize how weak your arguments are, right? So.
And that's the problem I'm having, is that we're seeing students and now I would be shocked to hear of any conservative student wanting to express any kind of opinion at this university anymore, given what's happened to the two students I just mentioned, right? By the same token, though, I work with a lot of students of color, right? And so I understand the frustration that they're feeling, right? I understand the frustration they're feeling around being targeted, particularly in a large city in Wisconsin, around their race. And understandably, I understand how I can get that. I can empathize with where they are, because Milwaukee in particular has a really high rate of incidents of black people being targeted by the police, right? There's an argument to be made about whether that is because there's a higher crime rate in Milwaukee versus other parts of the city or other parts of the state, or what does that look like. But that doesn't mean that that's not affecting the lives of our students, right? And doesn't mean it's not affecting the lives of the students that I work with, even because they're not out there committing crimes, right? But them being stopped and asked and questioned anytime they're walking just around the university is problematic. Right, so I guess I'm of two minds about it. Right, I want us to have
sort of. There are objective statistics out there that we have that will cover a lot of those things on a broader basis, not so much maybe the people you know or what you see.
Right,
you know,
right.
those are very subjective things. So there are objective statistics out there, and there are people that want to argue if those are even true. But I always come back to the idea that we have to agree that there is something out there that is objective or true, or there has to be a grounds of something that we can agree on. And so, if there are statistics out there, it's like, oh, well, that's all everything's underreported. It's all a conspiracy. It's like, okay, yeah. Well,
I mean, and to that point, I don't know those statistics off the top of my head, right? And so what I do know is what students are reporting to me, right? And what I do know is what I'm hearing from students about these issues. And so I support the idea of Black Lives Matter. I support the idea that people deserve to be treated fairly no matter what they look like or what their race is. I don't support the rioting and the looting that's happening, and I don't support any of those things because I feel like that's undermining the broader argument that you're trying to make. Right? If you're trying to make an argument around, I need to be treated fairly when it comes to the cops, maybe don't commit crimes while saying that argument. Right? Yeah. Maybe don't do things that undermine what you're saying and try and instead use the platform that you've been given in this particular moment to make a strong and compelling argument for people to stop and listen to you.
Sure. Well, Kira, what are your thoughts on the Black Lives Matter stuff?
Sure. I'm like right with you. It's just so much. Like with the protesting thing, I understand that there's for sure an outrage about what's going on. I definitely don't agree with what happened to that dude and like what's been happening in general. It just seems like a lot, and it feels like it's been blown out of proportion. And to be honest, like I know we're like three white people like talking about this, but like I always feel like
that shouldn't matter though.
I guess it shouldn't matter, but it's like I also kind of
I think if that were to matter, that would be inherently what the issue is in the first place, right? The issue in the first place is looking at somebody and saying, ascribing a certain whatever behavior, way of thinking, what you're allowed to say and what you're not allowed to say to your how much melanin is in your skin. That's the core issue. Yeah. That's the core issue here, and how it translates to police. But to take that and go, well, because of the melanin in my skin, I'm not allowed to talk about certain things, I think is at its core just as problematic.
You're very, very right about that. That's why I think that way, honestly, because
people shouldn't think that way, right? Like we shouldn't be like we shouldn't look at a black person and say, oh, they're going to commit more crime because they're black, or they might be, you know what I mean? They're more dangerous of a person than I am because of their skin color. It's like we shouldn't look at people like that. Right?
Yeah, you're very, very right.
But
that's why
continue.
I feel so confused about this whole thing because I feel like since I'm white I can't talk about it, and I feel like since I'm white I have when it was going on more I feel like it's kind of calmed down a little bit, but I kind of felt like I shouldn't go to these cities because I'm just scared. What if somebody just looks at me and they're like, oh, that fucking white girl? I don't know, I just feel like there was a lot of I don't know, it was just so controversial, and I didn't even have to say anything. I feel like somebody could look at me and be like, well, she's white and she's privileged. Well, I'm not.
And to that point, one of the interesting conversations we're having at work right now is what happens if an African American student or a student of color was to say that. Would the university have the same reaction that they're having to these conservative students and their behavior? And the short answer is we don't really know because it's not happening this moment. But it's an interesting thought to think about. What happens if a black student was to say, well, fuck all white people, right?
Well, to say it doesn't happen, I think, is a lie and a farce. I think it does happen. I think it does happen
we're just
a
not
lot.
Getting it
I think it does happen a lot.
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends, of many ethnicities, and I've heard that kind of stuff out of not even just African American, black, however you want to phrase it. I apologize if I'm using the wrong lingo. But let's say that, so the black community, people that I have friends on Facebook that are in the black community, not just them. I have friends who are of the Asian and Filipino descent who also say similar things, and it's on Facebook, and it's because I think they think 90% of their friends are Filipino and an Asian, it's like they can get away with it. But it's like, here I am, like the one white friend they forgot they had on Facebook, and I'm reading it, and I'm like, that's how you really feel? Man, that's not how I feel about you,
Yeah.
So it gets really weird, and to your point, Kiara, that we have been put in a really strange position here because over 60% of the population of America is white, and so we're all not allowed to speak unless we're behind Black Lives Matter. Then we can shout and yell and be emotional and scream and break things and break statues and loot and take a big screen TV home too. I mean, but to the reverse of what everything you guys are saying, and something that I've heard from a lot of the Black community that is very pro the Black Lives Matter movement.
Mm-hmm.
Is, and I do want to clarify something after this point about that, but something I am hearing about them is that all the fear you're having about going into a city because you're white and you might get attacked by some random person. You might even get attacked by a white person, right?
Yeah, who knows?
You might get attacked by these protesters or these rioters. They would say, well, that's how I feel every time I come into contact with a police officer. Right?
Yeah, I've actually heard that a lot,
and so there is perception and there is truth. And sometimes the perception gets a little murky, right? With what actually is going on, right?
Yeah.
I can't say I've ever felt very safe in any interactions I've had with police officers, although I've tried to conduct myself in a manner that wouldn't put me in any more harm.
Yeah.
But I can't say every interaction I've had with police officers. I mean, most of the time, I think there is an edge that you are put on when you're coming in contact with a police officer.
Oh, absolutely.
And I've heard a lot of my friends who are POC and just people POC in general starting to comment on that and act like they are saying, oh, it's so much worse than if you're white. And I'm like, how do you know?
Yeah.
Right.
Like, whenever I'm in contact with the police, it's a very on-edge experience, too. So everything that they're describing, I also feel,
Yeah.
And it's just like how you conduct yourself is what really matters when you're confronted with police. Now, so perception here matters when it comes to how we see these things and the truth. Now, I want to give, before I get into some of my, I have a few points I want to get out there, but one thing I do have to clear up here, I think ZP and Kiara, you both kind of touched on, there is a difference between saying Black Lives Matter, right? Because it's like ridiculously obvious. Of course they do, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a difference between the saying and there's a difference between the movement.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's something I've heard a lot of other people talk about. This is nothing new. I'm not like, oh, that's such a great idea, Zach. It's like, no, I've heard plenty of other people smarter than me say it. And but it's a really important distinction, because I think a lot of people, specifically people in the Black Lives Matter movement, are automatically assuming both things are the same. Right. And they are saying, well, if you don't agree with our movement, then you don't think Black Lives Matter. And that's not true, right? That's not true, right? No. And this happens in everything. This happens with everything. Like, you could be a Democrat, but you don't like Joe Biden, okay? You can be a Republican, but you don't like Trump, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You can believe Black Lives Matter, but you might not be with the movement, right? You might not be down with destroying statues of Christopher Columbus and Ulysses Grant, right? You might not be down with some of the whole idea of getting rid of all police, right? There are concepts and ideas that the movement is pushing that is going above and beyond just saying Black Lives Matter. And what does that mean? What does that involve? I've heard a lot of central and right-wing thinkers really challenging what that means. It's like the Black Lives Matter movement really wants to narrow that down into this narrative of white man kills black man unfairly, right? And that's where I want to go back to the stats, and I want to go back to the facts. And it's like, well, do the facts and does the truth support that claim? If it doesn't, well then, what is all this about? What is all this for, right?
Yeah.
And so, here's the thing. I think it was in 2019, there were 19 unarmed black civilians killed by police officers. Okay. I believe it was something like that, 19, right?
Yeah.
doing some run-of-the-mill math, it's 332 million Americans. The black population is something like 12% of that. So 12%. Let's say it's a little bit over 10%. So 10% of 332 million would be 33.2 million. So it'll be something like the black population is probably like 40 million people, something like that, 40, 45, let's say.
Sure. Yeah.
At most, it's like 45. But it's probably like 40 million people, something like that. So of the 40 million people in America who are African American, 19 of them were killed by cops. Right?
Yeah.
That's the statistic. That's such a statistic anomaly. That's up there with shark attacks and lightning strikes. Okay?
Yeah.
So if for everyone who's like all the POC who are like, oh my god, I am gonna die at the hands of the police. It's like, don't resist. It's like really basic. Like, don't resist arrest, right?
Yeah.
Don't try not to commit crimes, right? I mean, some crimes are hard not to, like a little speeding. All right, I've got too many speeding tickets to not be like don't commit any crime. It's like, okay, look, what are we defining as a crime? Speeding, right? Jaywalking. I mean, I understand some stuff gets a little ridiculous, right?
Yeah, of course.
So first of all, try not to commit any major crimes, but try not to commit crime, right? That's the advice I would give my kids. It's the advice I would give anybody I care about. Try not to commit crimes, right? And then if you do, the advice I would give to anyone I care about, no matter who they are or what walk of life they are, is that try to be respectable. And if you're gonna get arrested, don't resist arrest, right?
Yeah.
Challenge it in court. Challenge it later on. Is it gonna hurt Is it gonna fuck up your night? Is it gonna fuck up your day? Probably.
Yeah.
But my God, that's better than being dead. Or that's better than worsening your situation so that you're now going to have to pay some $500 ticket or $1,000 ticket for not obeying a police officer's orders.
Right.
Like, embarrass that motherfucker in court for overexerting his force, and make sure that motherfucker gets fired after the whole thing if you think you're in the right and he's in the wrong.
Yeah.
Right? But, like, is that going to be inconvenient? Absolutely. Life is inconvenient. Okay? It happens.
Yeah.
I've had plenty of illegal interactions where I was speeding or whatever, and it's very inconvenient, okay? Interactions with police, on average, are 95% of the time very inconvenient experiences for all of us, okay? But, like, don't make that 10 times worse by resisting arrest.
Yeah, definitely.
You know? Almost all these people that died, right? Regardless of skin color. We're not even talking... We're obviously just narrowing it down to the black people who are killed by cops.
Yeah.
It's like, all of them resisted arrest. All of them, I think, except for one or two. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like
the
7
most
or...
recent guy did not. He did not resist.
Which one?
George Floyd. I don't think
He did.
resisted.
He did. Oh, he did.
Oh, really? I did not think that. Oh, God, you're going to piss off some people right now, Zach.
Oh, well, that's fine. They could. The full videos are out. The full videos are out there. The full videos are out there.
Okay.
He definitely did. They tried to get him in the opposite side of the cop car, and he fell to the ground. And so they try to get him on I think it was the left side of the car, and by the time you see him on the ground with the knee down, he's on the right side of the car. Yeah. How did he get there? They tried to put him in the left side, very, very, like, just two of them, nicely.
Wow. Yeah, that
was before the Chauvin guy even got involved. So now you could blame it on, there was a lot of drugs in his system, okay, with the George Floyd thing. I don't know, maybe you're unaware, this guy was on, was it meth and fentanyl?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did not know any of this. I just know that it happened and it was all of a sudden like a huge thing. Yeah, so
I mean, obviously, I've been trying to keep up with a little bit of it, and probably too much. It's like things that, as far as things that immediately affect your life, you know, it's like, all right, well, I don't know how much this immediately affects my life, but I've got some time on my hands to keep up with what's going on in the world.
I think it's very important, yeah, for
sure. So everyone knows, you know, for those who are unaware, George Floyd had something like a huge criminal record. Mm-hmm. I think he had been in jail like a dozen times. Okay, like the worst, like the thing that he did. It was like the oh God, what was the word I'm trying to say? Like the lowest thing not the lowest thing he did. The least offensive thing he did was like he had like a bunch of cocaine on. Okay. And so if you ever know anything about the drug world, so he had fentanyl in his system. Fentanyl is something that is used to cut cocaine. So
I'm pretty sure that killed Mac Miller.
well, right. So
Yeah.
it's something that they use. It's not really cocaine. It's something that sort of mimics the escalated heart rate and sweating and everything.
People die from it.
Yes, but people will die from it because it's basically like all the cons of cocaine, none of the pros. So it's like you might as well be snorting drywall. Drywall is probably safer for you at that point. So he had meth and fentanyl in his system. If you know anything about those drugs, that's going to not only put you in a really rough state of mind, a really anxious state of mind, but you're not going to be thinking clearly, and they are both incredibly illegal. But this guy on his criminal record, he had one of the worst things he had done. Apparently, was he had held a pregnant woman at gunpoint and robbed her. He stuck a gun into a pregnant woman's belly, and threatened to kill her.
I actually just found that, yeah. That was, I think, 1998. It says theft from person, and that was the only one that's listed as theft from person. That's the state of Texas versus him. Well, he's from Texas, I didn't even know.
So the whole idea that this guy's some saint is a complete and utter farce. He was not a good guy, and that's probably why he was in the situation he was in. I mean, think about it. It's 2020. Who the fuck would try to pay with a forged check? Probably somebody on meth, okay? So now what is more concerning is another case that I followed, that is the case of Elijah McClain. And the case of Elijah McClain was one where I go completely the opposite, right? The case of Elijah McClain, this guy, something might have been wrong with him. I'm not sure if he had like autism or something, but he was a little socially awkward. But they showed a lot of videos of him and everything. He was the kind of person that would light up a room. He brought a lot of happiness and joy to people. He played the violin. He played the violin to animals, to cats and everything in a shelter.
That's so
He's
sweet.
seriously, he's like a character out of a TV show or something.
Yeah.
He's just too good for the world. And so this guy was walking home one time from a gas station or something with a ski mask on, and somebody had called it in. And you can hear the call. You can hear the call. Oddly enough, it wasn't some white Karen. Okay, if you listen to the call, it was a Hispanic guy. The guy had like broken English. Okay, it was a Hispanic guy. All right. So enough with this whole like white people calling in black people. It's like no. Okay. Don't make this whole narrative about white versus black bullshit. Okay.
Yeah.
A Hispanic guy had called in, and whether or not the call was warranted, is up for suspect. I wouldn't really call in somebody with a ski mask walking around, but I could understand why somebody might, right? There's some strange guy walking around with a ski mask, right? How the police handled it is where I have a big issue, okay? Because they basically charged the motherfucker and pinned him up against a wall, okay? Almost immediately. They have all the body camera footage. I've watched it. It's about 23 minutes long. I watched the whole goddamn thing. And the event itself wasn't 23 minutes long, but they got it from multiple body cams angles. So there was parts of it where you're like watching into it, and then they like go back in time, and you're watching all of what happened from a different angle, etc., etc. So the case of Elijah McClain, for those of you that don't know, kid walking home with a ski mask on. He's socially awkward. The police are trying to understand like what he's doing. He tells them very nicely he's just walking home, and they basically pinned him down, compressed his chest so he couldn't breathe. He was saying some of the nicest things. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking when you watch the video. He said things like, "I love you guys. You guys are doing a great job. Teamwork makes the dream work." It's like a kid who's got he's got some socially awkward problem, autism, something, right? Asperger's. I don't know. This is where I'm not sure what he had, but he might have had something, right? And I think the police assumed that he was like on a bunch of drugs, right?
Oh.
And he was resisting arrest. Now this is really the tragic part, is because if you're doing nothing wrong, my God, why wouldn't you resist arrest?
Right.
Yeah, he's like, what the hell am I doing?
Back to my other point, where it's like you're getting a speeding ticket, and it's like, and then you're like running over, getting out of your car and running away. It's like, look, just take your speeding ticket, okay? Like in that position, just take your speeding ticket. It's very difficult to tell somebody, deal with it later when you're doing nothing wrong and
Yeah,
a
you're
cop
in the
just slammed
moment.
you against a
Yeah.
brick wall, you know? So I feel so terrible for this kid.
Yeah.
And I watched the whole video, and the things he says something like, you know, it's like, oh, I wouldn't hurt a fly, I wouldn't do anything wrong, I don't even eat meat, I don't care if you guys do, but, you know, I'm summarizing.
That's so sad,
it's seriously one of the
Yeah.
most gut-wrenching
I didn't
things.
hear about that one.
And it's really sad. What they ended up doing to knock him out, which if you watch the video carefully, he's already unconscious by the time they're injecting him with this. But what they did was he kept resisting. He's like I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not going to do anything wrong. I'm not going to hurt you guys. Blah blah blah. Let me go. You know.
Mm-hmm.
And they keep thinking they must be thinking he's like on drugs and can't calm down. Honest to God, this kid is just a socially awkward person who is like for no good reason slammed up against a wall and pinned down and compressed, right? So he's probably just trying to get to like a safe spot. Before they injected him, he was throwing up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is just like not how you act, right? Like when someone's doing this, it's like, well, what the fuck, man? Like, what the fuck is wrong with these cops? And so what happened was they injected him with ketamine, and they injected him with like 3 to 5 times what you would give a horse.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
A significant amount of
And it killed him.
Well, of course, yeah. Damn.
And so for police, I don't care. I'm not really sure. It must have been somebody who was like a medical responder. I don't know if it was an actual police officer that injected the ketamine, obviously. That would definitely be illegal. But whoever did that needs to be fired. Probably put in
Obviously,
prison.
yeah.
That's straight up murder.
They knew
okay?
that. They knew
Yeah,
it had
to
be
give
murder.
3 to 5 times what you would give a fucking horse. Inject that into this. He was a very thin, frail kid. Okay,
Right.
He was not some like 300-pound man, right?
Yeah.
That was insane.
Wow.
Ketamine, of all things. What the fuck, man? Holy shit.
Yeah.
I can think of a bunch of other things that, you know what I mean? Like we're like a little tranquilizer or
Or he
something.
was that
My
tiny.
God.
Just have your officers handcuff him, put him in
That
the
was the thing.
freaking police car.
For me, it's like if he's that small, like really, are you that concerned? And I think one of the most disturbing things in the video, when I listened to it and watched it, was the police officer that was pinning against the wall. He's like, yeah, apparently he reached for my gun. I was like, why do you not know if he reached for your gun? Right? Like, why are you not able to to say, like, he reached for my gun? Like, why is it, like, a question in your mind if it's something that it's your job to know if he's reaching for your gun or not, right?
And it's like after the fact, it's incredibly clear that that claim by that police officer was complete and utter bullshit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
like, the more you learn about this kid's past, you learn about who he was as a person, and then you listen to the things he said, it's like, my God. It's like horrifying things come to mind about what should be done to the police officer that said he reached for my gun. It's like, you fucking asshat.
Yeah,
you fucking piece of shit.
Very true.
You know, that's the kind of thing that takes me to a whole other place where I can agree with some of what the Black Lives Matter movement is talking about, and that is how we view police in society. And I think this has become a big issue. There was a huge movement to militarize the police around the United States that happened during the Obama years. Okay, and I think it was unwarranted, unneeded, a waste of our tax dollars. It's been a giant mess. Now, the statistics on crime and behavior and everything, we can have a whole separate podcast and argument about that. I can walk with you on that, and a lot of that I'm very pro. Our civilian rights, and I'm very anti this police, this bolstering police bullshit, right? And I like to make the claim that police are like glorified hall monitors. Okay, that's what their role is in society. It's not to be a soldier. It's not to be a cowboy. This whole idea that they have to be armed to the teeth, like somebody ready to go to war, and have to be carrying around lethal force 100% of the time, is complete and utter bullshit. It's a complete stomp and you're crushing our Bill of Rights. I'm all for every single motherfucker in the United States carrying a gun. I am not for every police officer carrying a gun.
Yeah.
This
Yep.
is some weird power hungry state bullshit. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to that point, one of the cases that I've been following most closely is the case of Breonna Taylor down in Kentucky, right? So for people who don't know, this case was about a woman who was sleeping in her bed, and the
We're gonna I don't know. I'm gonna disagree with you a lot on this one, ZP.
But tell the story. Tell the story. I actually don't know this one. I want to hear this.
She was sleeping in her bed,
Yeah.
and the police did a no-knock entry warrant, right? So they just broke down her door, right? Looking for a drug dealer, to be fair. They were looking for a drug dealer that had used to live there. They had the drug dealer already in custody when they broke into this person's house. Her boyfriend tries to defend their house because they broke in, and they both get shot, and she dies.
Wow.
They also were both huge drug dealers. So like, that whole situation is really, really weird. And I'm probably gonna piss some people off there too. But I first heard the truth about Breonna Taylor from a black police officer, Officer Tatum, on YouTube. You can go check him out. He's got an interesting channel. He leans a little bit too far right wing for me on a lot of things, but he's a black police officer talking about Breonna Taylor. And so the fact about Breonna Taylor is very similar to the George Floyd thing. Did she deserve to die in her sleep and get shot by that? No, they didn't deserve to. You know, that whole thing was a huge, gross molestation of police authority. True, but Breonna Taylor and her boyfriend were no angels. They were in some deep shit. For me, that one is a rough one. It's kind of like if a police officer were to walk into the wrong house and kill a child molester, okay, it's kind of like it's like, yeah, bad police. It's like, yeah, bad police, but that person was pretty bad.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
so
yeah.
it's like not the right time. Police shouldn't be able to do that. I'm with you on that regard, but at the same time, let's stick to cases like Elijah McClain, right, where this guy's like, a socially awkward person. And let's stick to cases like that where there's a very clear misuse of police brutality, and we can have a clearer conversation. I feel like cases like George Floyd, cases like Breonna Taylor might be a little too messy, and too messy to have a clear conversation about the misuse of police power,
Yeah.
right? So I don't know about that one, ZP. That's just me though. So you at home can do some of your own independent research on the Breonna Taylor thing. I implore everybody to do their own independent research. I implore everybody to do their own independent research. But one of my big things with police brutality is that they shouldn't be carrying around lethal force. Not 100% of the time. Not even 50% of the time. They're glorified hall monitors. Do you give the hall monitor at high school, do you give him a fucking gun? Do you give him a knife? Do you give him a fucking bamboo stick? No! What the fuck? Give him a taser. Give him some pepper spray. Alright? That's how you de-escalate the situation. Now, people will often come back to me with like, well, what about the violent cases? What about the guy that's, got the gas station on a holdup, right? And he's got a gun pointed at the guy at the cash register at a gas station or the bank or whatever, right? Well, what are you going to do about that? First off, the police response is like 20 fucking minutes anyways. So probably nothing.
Mm-hmm.
For two, maybe cops in general should have weapons in their trunk. Mm-hmm. Maybe they should have them at the police station, right? And you should have a responder at the police station, right? Mm-hmm. That way the gun's not at your hip. And you're not going to escalate situations to where they don't need to go, right? You know what I mean?
That's true. That's
like
true.
I think what puts people on edge, every time I've been pulled over for a speeding ticket, it's like the thing that puts me on edge, this guy's got a fucking gun, okay? I feel like I would have a much more natural reaction with a police officer if I knew they just had a taser and some pepper spray. I mean, that's enough to freak some people out, but a lot less than most people are freaked out by the police because they got a fucking gun that can end your life. Boom, right there. Who the fuck? For what? For a 6-month fucking little camp? A 6-month fucking justice school? That's some bullshit. You gotta go through 4 years of training.
Hands for sure.
You know what I mean? To be a plumber, you gotta go through to mess with pipes under somebody's house, right? To fix somebody's electric, you gotta go through like 2 years of school. right?
Plus the whole internship.
For college, you got to do all kinds of crazy shit, right? You got to go through 4 years, and sometimes it'd be a teacher 5 years. But to wield lethal force, to be able to barge into somebody's house and shoot them while they're sleeping, to have the ability to inject somebody with 3 to 5 times the amount of ketamine you would give a horse, right? To be able to kneel on a guy's head and kill him, knowing that this guy's probably fucking cracked out of his mind.
Yeah.
Okay. You need to go through a 6-month fucking little boot camp simulation bullshit, and you got to do your 5 fucking pull-ups. Okay, it's like, no. This is wrong. And I think this says a lot about what we value about society, and there's a lot of arguments we can have there, right? A lot of people, especially the left, are hitting home on medical care and teaching and blah blah blah, and you know, I don't know if I agree with everything they have to say on those things, but I do think education should be prioritized. But as far as police, we should be prioritizing them.
Yeah.
And we need to clearly define what the fuck they are in society. Are they glorified hall monitors? Are they soldiers?
Mm-hmm.
Are they cowboys? What are they? Because during the Obama years, this was something that was pushed under Obama and Biden, okay? This was something that they did.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, I don't think that experiment has panned out. I think we need to repeal all that. I think we should go back to the cops just wearing a nice button-down shirt and some nice dress pants, and they got the little badge, and give them a taser and some pepper spray. None of this like Navy SEAL fucking vest shit.
Yeah. I think that all police departments need to be talking about this at least right now and considering it. But I don't think we also need to defund the police though. Like I don't think we need to be like funding them more or anything, but like I don't know, it's just like I understand the frustration with like, you know, these black people that are innocent dying, like Elijah, was it?
Elijah McClain.
Yeah, but Elijah McClain, especially. But it's like, I don't know. It's just like it's like everybody gets so negative about the police. And I get it. I totally get it. Like that was not right for sure.
Yeah.
But like we can't just completely be like, well, just defund the police. We just don't need them. Like, I think we need somebody there, but they need to kind of work on themselves or whatever. Yeah.
I think there's 2 thoughts that I have about that. Like one is like I agree that I don't think we should defund the police, right?
Yeah.
But when I hear defund the police, I'm not hearing like dismantle the police. What I'm hearing is kind of more what Zach is saying, right? Like let's retrain, reorganize, and like redistribute what's going on with the police force here, right?
Yeah.
Like let's think about like why is it that we have military grade assault weapons with every single police officer that roams the street, right? Yeah. Why is it that we're doing, like, providing those types of things? Like, there are cases in the extremes, of course, of police forces buying tanks. Like, why do you need a tank? Like, what is the purpose of your police force owning a tank?
I think that's pretty extreme, and I don't see police running around with ARs and assault grade weapons. What I'm really talking about is a Glock at your side, right? You know, it's like, why do they need that? Why do they need that 95% of the time?
Yeah,
well,
like
the moments that
situations.
The moments that they need them are very, very far, you know, few and far between, right? And the times that they need them, they can have it in the fucking trunk of their car, right? Or they can have it at the station. I mean, you really think that's gonna like ruin the response time? Yeah. Honestly? You really think the extra 20 seconds it takes to go out into the trunk and pull out the Glock?
Yeah. And
get back in the driver's seat and get to where you need to go? You honestly think that is going to ruin your response time? Your 20, 30-minute fucking response time to any... You know what I mean?
That's
it's
true.
like... And now, just... The vast majority of police interactions are for dumb bullshit. The vast majority of them, it's like for speeding tickets and jaywalking and really stupid, you know... they're getting a noise complaint or some bullshit, okay? It's not these violent interactions where they need to be armed to the teeth like a fucking samurai, okay? This is not what police are for. We really have to clearly define what police are. And
Yeah.
maybe society will side with the idea that they need to be soldiers. Maybe they will. I think it also has to be something that needs to be disputed between local governments, right? I could see why the south side of Chicago might want to arm their police a little bit, okay?
Yeah.
Than, say, the village, the town down the road, okay?
Yeah.
But, so I think that some of that needs to be taken into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
But when you can take it, even when you take that into consideration, the vast majority of America, police in America, don't need lethal force at their side
Yeah.
for 95% of their job.
It's very true.
And I think, my whole point is, I think that escalates every situation. You know? So it's
Right.
like if you want to naturally de-escalate the situation, let's make sure cops know what the fuck they are. They are hall monitors to serve and protect the people, right? That does not mean that you get to be a cowboy, soldier, bully your way through any situation because you got a fucking gun at your side.
Yeah.
No, sir. No. No, thank you. I don't want that America. I don't think any of us want that America. And if you want to defend yourself as a cashier at a bank or a cashier at a gas station or whatever, the quickest response you're going to have is having a fucking Glock under the goddamn counter, okay?
Yeah.
That's what it's going to be. And that's what that First is it the First Amendment? Yeah, that's
Second
what that's
Amendment.
Second Amendment. That's what the Second Amendment's for, okay? Probably sound really stupid getting those two mixed up.
The first-
But it's late. It's late
Hey, I
here,
couldn't
okay?
tell you.
Yeah, so we're all tired. But that's what the Second Amendment's for. That's what it's for,
Yeah.
right? It's for the gas station clerk to protect themselves
Yeah.
because the
That's
cops
very true.
are not going to get there in time,
Yeah. No.
right?
Never.
And so that again. It just goes back to this whole idea. People are like anti-gun rights, you know, but then they're like, I
could
don't
be
know.
almost
It all
like-
gets. Then they're anti-police, and then it's like, okay, so then what do you do when someone's attacking your house, right?
Right.
You gotta throw cutlery from the kitchen at them. Okay, it's like,
just
sorry,
to be really
I'm not a
good at
fucking
knife
ninja.
throwing.
Yeah,
All right,
so-
yeah, sorry.
Not
You know, like, well, yeah, we all gotta train to be Naruto in our free time. This is the liberal world that the liberals want. Just get really good at
Yeah.
throwing knives.
Hey,
It's like,
I
look,
have nothing against melee weapons though. Like people should use melee weapons a little bit more. I think.
my
Kill
dad,
and COD, right? Like,
my dad, he gets goofy about that kind of stuff. He's always like, carry a bat, have a bat by the door, have a bat everywhere, have a bat
Yeah, I
just
guess
hidden
a
around the
bat,
house.
but,
And I'm like,
look,
it's not a bad idea. Yeah.
It's not.
I mean, better safe than sorry, I guess.
Somebody's
but-
coming around the
Nobody's
corner.
gonna expect a tomahawk being thrown at your head. Okay?
Oh my
I'm just letting
God.
you know.
That's why those axe throwing bars exist.
Exactly.
The training.
Training us for when the Second
It's the
Amendment
training.
disappears.
Yeah, yeah.
Secret
Society-
government.
At
Society
least
of
I'll have
Ninjas.
those though, you know. So.
Yeah.
Jesus, yeah.
So that's where I really feel for them. The militarization of the police is trash. It's garbage,
Mhm.
and we really need to reevaluate what police are in society. This is where I totally agree with the Black Lives Matter movement. Where they lose me is where they start talking about, on the fringe, they start talking about dismantling police, and it's like just supplement it with social whatever, and it's like. Look, that might be interesting to experiment with and try. We tried militarizing police, and I don't think it's panned out. I think it's made things way worse,
Yeah.
right? That's something to try, but I lean more towards defunding the cops and reevaluating and redefining what they are. And I don't think they're soldiers, don't think they're cowboys. I will keep repeating that to death, because what I see when I go outside and I see a fucking cop walking around downtown is I see a soldier. I see somebody looks closer to they look more like a Navy goddamn SEAL in the middle of summertime, okay? Look like some special ops Call of Duty bullshit. Then they do like a fucking somebody in like their dress blues or some, you know what I mean? Like a nice button-down shirt, some dress pants, and
Yeah.
hey, I'm here to write you a fucking speeding ticket. Okay?
That's like the FBI.
That's
should
like-
the FBI just do that instead, or you know they always
What?
dress nice, so should they just be the ones to shoot tickets?
FBI?
Well, because they're always like so nicely dressed, you know.
I don't know.
Like you would never know. It would just be a random guy in a suit, and you'd be like, "What the hell do you want?" He's like, "Actually, I'm writing you a ticket
Some
because
men in black
I'm
shit.
the police for."
Well, hey, that's one way to do it.
I don't know.
I mean,
Just
just think
joking.
about police. Like, think like there's a show Reno 911, right?
Oh
like
my
what,
God.
like what they wore. No, well, I'm just saying. Think about what they wore though, right?
Oh, right.
They didn't look like some special ops shit.
No, they didn't. Yeah.
Let's go speeding right now. Like in 2 miles down the road, the guy that's gonna pull you over has got a fucking military vest on, fucking bulletproof vest. Yeah, 8 grenades, ready to EMP your car. Okay, like they're fucking ready, man. They're ready. And it's like,
it
do
is
we
a
need
little...
that? Do we need that?
Yeah, for the police, I don't think so.
I don't know.
For sure.
I don't know. You know,
But
that's where I am really with the Black Lives Matter movement when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah.
When it comes to all the racial stuff, my God, they are statistically off the fucking.
Right.
They are so far from reality. It's kind of gross and sickening. To make this all about race is very disgusting in my opinion.
It's hard. You'd think that at this point, in 2020, we wouldn't be thinking we wouldn't be black versus white again. Like
it's also a real disservice.
I understand what's going on, but it's like
it's also a real disservice to every other ethnicity in the United States.
So what about us?
Hispanics are like twice. The Hispanic population is twice as much as the black population in America. It's like okay, we're just gonna act like they don't exist. Sure.
I mean, it's also creating. I mean, this is something we talked a little bit off the air, but it's creating that cancel culture that I find really problematic. Like, if you don't agree with them, then everyone is out here targeting you and trying to make sure that your voice is silenced. And to your point before about, like, feeling like we can't talk about this because we're white, and it's the same thing that we're seeing with celebrities. It's the same thing that we're seeing, like, what J.K. Rowling is going through right now with all the trans stuff, right? All these people are out there, like, stop reading Harry Potter because she doesn't support trans rights. Like, cancel culture is becoming dangerous, right? Like, and exactly, like, why now? Like, out of all the times that, like, things are happening, like, why is this cancel culture arising now? And that's the struggle I have with the whole thing.
That is just so damn annoying, dude.
Like, nobody's allowed to even talk about it. Nobody's even allowed to think about talking about it, right? Rather, instead, you just get shouted down and shamed into agreeing with people, and that's not the way to have a dialogue, right? That's not the way to really engage with a meaningful conversation. So
yeah, no, not at all. It's just like, nope, you're canceled. You can't say anything. No. It's like, okay, I guess I'm done talking. Like, that's how I feel if somebody tries to cancel me ever. It never has happened, but, like, you know, it's just like, okay. You know, like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I don't know. I'm just gonna keep
right. It's because it's
I don't think I did anything wrong.
Right, like because that's the thing. Like if you make an apology, it's like, well, he's only apologizing because we said this. I mean, he's only apologizing because X, X, and X, and like this apology isn't good enough. If you really felt sorry, you wouldn't have done this to begin with. So it's like, okay, so there's no room for dialogue. There's no room for learning to happen. There's no room for growth to happen anymore. Like what the hell?
Right? I feel like with like the Black Lives Matter and like I feel like with, like, white males, like, I feel like they're going after, like, white males, I feel like right now because of the police officer and stuff. And I don't know. You know, I don't know. I just think it's, like...
I always go back to...
I don't know.
Hold individuals accountable. It's not that there aren't bad people out there.
Obviously,
Hold individuals accountable. But when we start painting broad brushes with, you know, whatever demographic, whatever demographic, we got to break it down. And it's really, really weird that they only want to break it down by gender, sexual orientation, and race.
Yeah.
They never want to break it down by financial status, attractiveness, social comprehension, intelligence. I mean, there are so many other areas where you can start to really fraction everything, and they just choose 3. There's literally endless possibilities to fraction everything, and they just choose very specifically 3 things.
And 3
it's
things.
Usually right around election year, right?
Oh, of course.
And it's like, this is just too convenient. There's a trend going on here. The BLM just happens to roll around every 2 to 4 years, right around election time. And it's like, okay. And the cool thing is, I think this time around, I do see a lot more really, really intelligent centrist and right-wing black speakers coming out. And they are coming out against cancel culture, and they are coming out against Black Lives Matter, and they're coming with their own perspectives. And I think that is shining this time more than in previous attempts that the BLM has made. And to speak on some of this stuff and get my opinion out there fully and completely, I guess, there's a lot to unpack with the whole racial thing. I think a lot of what you're seeing or what they are claiming as white privilege is simply majority privilege. if you were to take a white person, a random white person out of America and put them anywhere else in the world, all of their white privilege disappears. Okay?
Yeah.
Because guess what? The rest of the world is very homogenous. Homogenous means that almost everyone in that country is that ethnicity. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
When we went to Japan for 2 weeks in last November, it's like 99% of the people in Japan are Japanese. Okay? And they consider you gaijin. You're a foreigner. We were denied to go in, even going into businesses with translators. Not that we spoke the most well Japanese, but some of them just looked at us and they're like, "Get out of here, gaijin. We don't want you."
Yeah.
And it's like, that's the kind of stuff that reminds me of like what I learned about Jim Crow laws in history class,
Mm-hmm.
right? And some of the racial prejudices that happened. And it's like, you know, here I am experiencing that in 2019 technically, but almost 2020, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was the end of last year in Japan, another first world country, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what I was experiencing was being a minority, right?
Right.
And so that's something that seems to be this unifying thing, you know, minorities. And but again, it's minorities based on what? It's based on these like these three things, right? You can't even call women a minority because guess what? Half the country is fucking women. Okay, so but the other two are definitely based on minorities: the sexual orientation and melanin in your skin.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's like, well, there are so many other ways you could fraction people and see people. And the issue is as you start to do that more and more, you have to see people as individuals. And so I really think a lot of the Black Lives Matter movement has missed everything that Martin Luther King said and talked about, right? Judge a man by the content of his character, not the color of his skin, right?
Right.
Things like that. I think they really are missing the ball. And they are. And I think there is this attack on white males that has been going on historically. Is some of it
For a
warranted?
while,
Who
for
knows?
sure.
I don't know. But is it right? No, it's not
No.
right. It's not right. It's
Not
not.
at all.
It's the core argument about it is simply looking for a scapegoat for horrors of the past that never happened to the people of the present. And so everyone in the present is like a rebel without a cause. I would love for you to go live a day, live a week, live a month out in the Philippines. Okay? Go live in Singapore. Go live in South Africa. Okay? Or Kenya. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And talk to me and then come back and say, well, America is so bad. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
You know, this whole idea, I think it's very, very ungrateful. And I think a lot of it is rooted in simply the fact that there's a majority privilege, right? It's like 63% of the population is Caucasian, is white, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what do you want to? But here's my question to everybody that like is like, yeah, Zach, it is majority privilege, blah 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 blah. It's like, okay, well, what do you want to do about that?
Mm-hmm.
Like what is your solution? I can think of some very horrific ways, and we can solve that if you want to equalize that. You know, it involves with one of two things: either a lot of forced breeding or murder.
Yeah.
And we played around with those things as a human species in the last 100 years.
Yeah.
And I think we all decided that what Stalin, Mao, and Hitler did less than 100 years ago was pretty bad.
Yeah. Of
Right?
course.
But it's like, what are you going to do about a majority privilege? In my eyes, it's very, very slowly taking care of itself. I think my education, right? I went to different schools. I went to some private Christian schools. I went to some public schools.
Mm-hmm.
I think my personal education that I've had has done a very, very good job of educating me about the past to make sure things don't go forward in the present. And the majority of people I talk to are very, very aware of things that maybe their parents or their grandparents were not.
Yeah.
I think education is doing its job. It's just slow. And culturally, we live in this world where we get everything now.
Yeah.
We live in this instantly gratified culture.
Yeah.
Talk about cancel
Sure.
culture, talk about all this, whatever you want to talk about. We live in a society where Amazon Prime, Amazon Now,
Yeah.
right? You order something, you get it tomorrow. There's no waiting anymore.
Drone
Flies it to your house, boom, boom, in your mailbox. Crazy, right?
I know.
How do you get any quicker than that? Dude, like 10, 15 years ago, you had to wait to fucking buffer each fucking tab you got on your
Yeah.
computer, right?
Dial-up
Okay,
internet.
now it's like, boom, speed of light, baby, speed of light.
Yeah.
Okay, for cheap. It was expensive to have internet back in the day. Now it's relatively cheaper than it was, and it's way more efficient.
Yeah.
Right? We live in a society where you can microwave your food. If you don't even want to cook, you can go down the road and get some food really fast.
Mm-hmm.
You can even have it delivered to your door now with things like Uber Eats. I mean, there is so much the efficiency of life and how fast you can get something if you want it is insane.
Mm-hmm.
Serotonin. I think we've talked about serotonin in the past with podcasts and everything, and how it's like, if you want serotonin, you can go win a game of Call of Duty in like 30 minutes, even if you're bad, even if you're fucking
Very
bad,
true.
you know, you get that serotonin kick. There is so much of life that is like, if you want it, you get it now.
Yeah.
But when it comes to
Very
these
true.
deeper, more complex things that are not instant, it's not instantaneous, right? Things that take a long, long time.
Right.
It's like, people are like, what? I have to wait? What's this?
Yeah,
I've
that's
never
a problem.
experienced this. I've been conditioned to get everything when I want it.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't get it now? That makes me mad. I'm gonna go burn shit down.
Oh my
Let's
God.
go wreck some shit. You know?
Yeah, very true. I just.
That to me, it's like, I think we need to get a reality check. Most people just need a fucking reality check.
No, it's just,
You know?
yeah, the general message here, really.
And
I'm over it.
yeah, people seriously.
2020 sucks.
Whatever. I've had a great year. I don't know about the rest of you guys. I gotta say the rest of the world.
I personally have too. It's just like everything else, like the media mostly and all that. It's just like just shut up.
I know.
Like I don't know. But other than that, whatever.
I got called racist for saying that Martin Luther King uses peaceful protests.
That's a fact.
How was that racist?
I know. By somebody who I've offered to come on the podcast multiple times. Her name's Brooke Olson. Calling you out, Brooke. Again, you can come on the podcast and argue
Brooke
with me.
Olson.
All right, yeah.
Sorry,
you piece of shit. I'm just kidding. No. I always thought she was pretty level-headed and a pretty smart gal. And invited her on the podcast a couple times because there were times where her and I would agree and disagree.
Mm.
And she posted something. It was like this long list, and it was like 10 things. And if you disagree with me on any of this, you're a racist. And one of the things was saying Martin Luther King was pro-peaceful protests. And I'm like,
he was.
Exactly. Reality check. He was.
Okay, but even if he wasn't, is that racist though?
Why would he be racist? Saying that? Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, everyone's gonna say, even if he was Malcolm X, okay? Even if you said Malcolm X was pro-peaceful protest, is that inherently racist to say that?
That statement is not racist at all.
And this is the problem, going back to the cancel culture thing. It's like, this is the problem. These people are like absolutists.
Right.
They're dogmatic. It's weird. It's like a religion. It's like, you're with us or you're going to hell. You're burning in hell.
Right.
But
right? They've redefined the dogma. They've redefined the indoctrination. Right? They're writing their own Bible. And it's like, this is not good, man. You know, this is not good.
Yeah.
This is looking a lot like a religion, like a cult, dude. Okay, it's a little weird.
Yes.
Next, you're gonna be erecting a god. You know, it's like, that's the next
God.
step. They're already there, bro.
They're already taking on the monuments.
They're already, man.
Making space for it.
They're melting them down, and they're gonna pour them in all of our drinks and make us drink them like Moses and the golden calf. And there you go. It's fucking religion all over again, dude. It's weird. It's a little strange.
It's very
It's
strange.
a little strange.
Oh, God.
And I'm not jiving with it, you peeps. I'm not jiving with it. So, some of that is just really, really strange. Where I had another friend who made some. She posted something, and I liked her post. Right? Didn't agree with all of it, but I liked it. And then somebody in the comments said everything that I didn't agree with. You know, like about the post. You know, and I liked that comment. Didn't comment on it. I was taking an active stance to like not involve myself in this one because I'm like, I don't want to waste 2 hours. You know, like I don't. So many times I'm like, I shouldn't comment on this because this is going to take away from more important things.
Yeah.
And I liked that comment, and she fucking tagged me in the goddamn fucking thing and was like,
Yeah.
you would like this comment, Zach. I'm like, what the fuck?
She's trying
What
to get
the
you to respond.
yeah, man, yeah. And I'm like, hey, and I commented, I'm like, I purposely didn't respond because I didn't want to get involved, right?
Yeah.
Her and I got into a message in direct messenger, and it was really weird, man. She was like on the attack, right? She was like asking me all kinds of weird questions, like, would you be okay if your children dated somebody who is not white? And I'm like, of course I would. You know, like
Yeah.
I would have no problem with that. I've been with women from every ethnicity I can think of. You know, it's like I would have no qualm, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, the shit she said, dude. She's
She's
like,
trying to get something.
she was like, that doesn't
How do you-
matter. White masters had sex with their black feminine slaves, and I'm like, how do
I'm
you
sorry,
fucking
are we
get
living
that?
in that?
How do you get that out of what I just said, right? Why does
Oh my
that,
God.
like, I would have no problem with my children doing that, like, you know what I mean? And then I gave an example of why it would be hypocritical if I thought it would be wrong for my children to, like, see somebody who's not Caucasian, right? And then she's like, all she hears is, white master having sex with black slave, like, what the fuck? That's disgusting. And I said that to her. I'm like, that's disgusting
I
that your
don't-
mind goes there, man. You know, like, that's gross. And I think it's well, I think in her case it's a projection of something she has to deal with. Maybe something's going on in her head.
I don't know.
She's some weird trauma or whatever she's got going on. Okay, but it's not right. This is really getting.
That's
just
why
disgusting.
I don't know ever what to say when people say something like that. Like, if somebody would
Yeah.
respond to me like that, I honestly, it sounds so stupid, but I'd probably just be like, oh, really? I didn't know that. That's really, that sucks, man.
yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
what to
yeah,
say. Like, I
yeah.
just feel like, not that it's insensitive, it's just like that actual, like, doing of, like, yeah, that's really okay, but, like, what does it have to do with what we're talking about? Like,
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. You know, and
like, it's almost uncomfortable. It's like, oh my god, like.
right, and then it's like
So
I don't want to be
weird.
your friend because you make things uncomfortable, not because it's like if I were to defriend that person, I didn't defriend her.
Yeah.
She's still on my Facebook.
Yeah. Of course.
But it's like if I were to defriend her, would she take that as, oh, you're racist, Zach? You know, and it's like, no, I'm not. Right? I find you an
Yeah.
uncomfortable person to have a conversation with. I find you to be very racist. You know, that's how you feel. It's like people that do that to you, they want to
Yeah.
put you in a box. Like, if you know anything about me as an individual, you should know that I'm not. That's not me, right? And so that's something I've posted about this too. It's like, if you don't have anything to apologize for, don't feel guilty,
Yeah.
right? Like, the people who feel guilty, I think, have a reason to be guilty.
Of course.
And that's what I would say. That's what I would watch out for, right?
Yeah.
Especially to my friends on the left who are not Caucasian, right? I would be careful of your Caucasian allies. It's not a fucking war, man. This is not a
Yeah.
war. Don't call them allies. It's weird. The lingo is weird and it's divisive. But whatever you want to say, oh, my white allies. Those are the people you gotta be careful for, because they feel like they have something that they're guilty of. And it's like, if you're a good person, if you're a good
signaling all that.
yeah, if you're a good person, you have nothing to feel sorry for. You have
Yeah.
nothing to be guilty of. Just keep living your life, you know. So
Stay off the internet for a little bit.
maybe.
I don't know.
Could be good for most people.
Just
I
know
think
what to dive into and what not to, you know? You don't
Yeah.
always have to agree with somebody. You don't always have to, like, I mean, I don't know, you
Put
just
your
don't
2
always
cents
have
out
to,
there.
Yeah.
That's one of my things is I have been trying to get off Facebook because I have too much
Yeah, I
time.
know that
get
for
too much-
sure.
Yeah, I have too much time on my hands, and I do dive into things with people a little too often. But I should save it for doing more of these podcasts. I think not having the podcast is hurt that a little while, and just being around and being at home all the time, not being able to go out and do anything.
Being in quarantine,
You know,
Everybody's
yeah.
like, I'm gonna fight online.
Yeah, and I wasn't the only person, you know, that was doing it. You know, I know a lot of people did that, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I attempt to balance things. I attempt to see, you know, if someone's getting too, it's like, okay, well, let's think about this for a second. You know, I had a right-wing friend who was getting really upset about the Redskins changing their name, and recently, and I'm like, dude, just who cares?
I didn't even know
It's a little
that, so-
inappropriate to begin with. It's a little cringy. You know,
I guess so.
Would
It could be totally canceled within a minute.
Right. It's like
Redskins.
Would it be okay if we had a basketball team named Blackskins? It's like, fuck
absolutely
no.
not.
Would it be okay if there was a baseball team called the White Skins or the Yellow Skins? It's like, no. This is a little weird. It's a little cringy, right? Brown Skins. Okay? It's a little weird.
Yeah.
They want to change the name from the Redskins to the Natives?
Yeah, like
Let
whatever, but I don't know.
Let them. Who gives a shit? You know?
Yeah.
Don't make a mountain out of a molehill.
Sports fans.
Yeah.
Like, I'm triggered.
So, right. That's the funny part about what this guy did. His whole post was like, "Oh, these fucking libtard pansy snowflakes, triggered little bitches."
Jesus.
And I'm like, and then in the comments, I'm like, you kind of sound triggered there. You know, like about the Redskins changing their name, dude. Like, oh
no. Hot kettle black much, right?
Yeah. It's like, I don't know.
Fucking Redskins.
People are so fucking weird. Anything else? Has anybody else got anything to say about the Black Lives Matter? I know there's a lot to say. We'll probably come back to some of these topics.
No.
You know, it's really there is a lot more I would like to get into with the Black Lives Matter. I guess briefly we'll dive into some of the statistics. I should have brought some of that up sooner. So, some of this whole idea that the Black Lives Matter movement has about like police killing the black community more than other communities is false. It's based off false evidence. What there is clear evidence of is that the black community is incarcerated higher than other ethnic groups.
Yeah.
And racial groups. Okay.
Uh-huh.
But there is no evidence whatsoever that the black community is dying at higher rates. The numbers can be misleading. It's like this. If you were hanging around somebody who's smoking, are you at higher risk of getting secondhand smoke?
Of course.
Yeah.
Duh.
Mm-hmm. Right?
So the black community is at higher risk of dying to the hands of police simply because they're getting incarcerated more. So you have to deal with a higher incarceration rate. The black community makes up like 12, 13% of the population, and they're committing like 40 to 50% of the crimes.
Yeah.
Okay? And so that's an issue, right? And so that's where you have to have the conversation and the argument about, well, is that all racial profiling, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the data that I'm looking at, it's something like racial profiling and racism or prejudice and what's the word I'm looking for? Unconscious bias.
Yeah.
All of that. It's very, very difficult to measure unconscious bias, but what you can measure in the racial thing is like how harshly people are treated. Right?
Yeah.
So, like the use of pepper spray, tasers, and violence is something that you can measure. Mm-hmm. And based on all that data that the police have in their police reports, it's something like the racial component, the racism or prejudice component accounts for 10% of the dealings. You still have 90% of it to fucking to explain, right? The difference. Right?
Yeah.
So, it's not saying that 10% of incarcerations are caused by that. It's saying that the difference. So, it's like, 10% of the difference is caused by prejudice based on the research that we have. And we have it. We do have it.
Yeah.
Right? So, we have over a decade of it. So, it's like, you can argue about how that's measured, if it's accurate, all that jazz. But what we do have objectively measures about 10%. So, what is the other part? And a lot of it, it's like this is where it gets difficult as three white people to talk about, because it's like, this is not, I'm pretty sure, I know you both pretty well, and I know myself decently, this is not our culture, right? Like, we are not engrossed in the black community as much as other people would be. Right, I enjoy a little bit of hip hop. I really like Skee-Lo. I really like Hobson. I really like some different hip hop, artists and things like that. Mm-hmm. But I am not enthralled or engrossed in the black community personally, and so it's very difficult It's kind of like somebody talking about your family, right? you can't talk shit about my family because you're not my family, right? So I think it's something like that.
That's
where
why
it's
so
like
hard,
it's it's difficult for an outsider, even though they might be the one that sees what you can't see, right? It's difficult for somebody to go and sit there and criticize your family when they're not part of your family, right? And it takes a really open and objective mind to sit there and take that criticism and listen properly, right? And I don't think that's a conversation that most people are ready for, regardless. But from what I can tell, and everything I'm about to say doesn't mean we can sit here and talk about the problems within the white community, right, here in America. There's plenty of problems to talk about: school shootings, authoritarian cops. Okay, there's a lot of things we can talk about when it comes to the issues of the white community. Hands down, and I'm no fan of most of it. Okay, I don't really watch a lot of NASCAR. I think a lot of the mental illness stuff is kind of bullcrap. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff in white culture that is just fucking pathetic. Okay, and we can talk about that sometime. Sure. But within the black community, there are some notable things. I think one of the major things that is correlated to crime, very specifically, is having a father in the household. And the numbers on that are staggering. It's something like over 70% of black households don't have a father in them.
That's a lot.
That is a lot.
That means only 1 out of every 4 black kids you know and see has had a dad in their life.
Yeah. That's just crazy to think about.
That is staggering. And the psychological effects of that are very, very clear. It's not just on crime, it's on education, it's on articulation, how well you are holding yourself in front of a crowd, talking to people. There are so many things that are linked to having a father in your life. I mean, imagine not having a mother in your life, right? Both those things are very, very, very important, and the psychological evidence on that is decades old. Okay, it is like some of the most solid research that's out there in the field. So it's not very difficult to see where things can go wrong when a father's not in the home.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that has been affecting culture as a whole. We can look back to the 1960s where the rates of fatherless homes in the black community was something like 23%, right? And the rates were like 5% in the white community. And now the rates are over 70% in the black community. It's something like 20%, over 20% in the white community, right? And then you've also seen the rates of divorce have increased exponentially in the last 60 years too. So things like this, removing the father from the household, is something I think that is crucial. I also think that the evidence, I think this is, correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is the highest positive correlation that exists is the relative poverty and crime.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not poverty. It's not poverty that increases crime itself, right? Like if everyone in Wyoming is making $24,000 a year, there's relatively no crime.
Right.
There's much less crime, right? And in America, I think it's under $24,000 is the poverty line, something like that. Something between like 18,000 and 24,000.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So if everyone in Wyoming is making 24,000, there's like relatively no crime. But if you have like, I don't know, is it 20% of the population, 30% of the population in Wyoming making 72,000, and then you have 70 to 80% making 18,000, it's that relative poverty that increases crime rates.
Right.
And so where do you see that relative poverty? Well, you see a lot of it in big inner cities like New York, LA, Chicago, Detroit, Denver. This is where you see a lot of that relative poverty, where you have a large chunk of your population making over $70,000 a year. Exactly. You also have a large part of your population making under $20,000 a year. And it's that relative poverty that increases crime. That's why when you go to smaller towns where everyone's roughly making the same, you see very little crime, right?
Yeah.
So, then there's been a lot of psychological studies done on that kind of stuff, and I think it's one of the only things that has a higher positive correlation than IQ, right? So the IQ is like number 2 or number 3. Like IQ and success is like the second or third most positive correlation out there. The number 1 is relative poverty and crime rates.
Right.
Wow.
So that's something to consider, and that's why. So it's important to keep families together. There was a politician, I think his name was Ross Perot, and he said something like a country destabilizes when you break down the family, and you need a strong family base and you need a manufacturer base, right? And a manufacturing base secures well-paying jobs that decrease relative poverty, right? For people that just graduate high school, they don't want to go on to higher education, right? So it's like the more people, it's going to take a long time for us to get more people in higher education to increase income levels, right? Or stabilize some of that relative poverty. But we got a dog barking out the window there.
Sorry.
No worries.
It's the most annoying dog.
So one of the ways you secure some of that relative poverty or get rid of it is to make sure you have a manufacturing base, right?
Right.
Because think about the jobs that you have to have for people that don't go on to any higher education or skilled field or field of trade or anything.
Right,
like
and
that.
those jobs don't go away even if you educated your whole population, right? You'd still need those jobs, right? Like you would still need people doing those things, right? So it's important to realize that, to your point, like we need a diversity of experiences amongst people. We need a diversity of experiences, and to your point, like relative poverty does genuinely matter, and it's something to pay attention to and consider when you're thinking about how you work with others and how you work with the things around you, and why the crime rates are the way they are, right? Like race plays a factor into those things because people would argue that the Black community in particular has been kept in a relatively low economic state compared to others, right? And that's where some of those crime rates come from. Like to bring it back to the Black Lives Matter movement conversation.
Right. And there are a lot of different parallels you can make with other ethnic groups.
Right.
As far as a lot of that, you can make parallels with the Asian community and the Hispanic community, and look at why things differ. Right. Crime rates being one of them. The Hispanic average household income, I think, is something like $44,000 a year. The average Black household income is like $42,000. The average white household income is something like $61,000, and the average Asian household income is something between like $82,000 and $85,000.
Right.
So, and I think a lot of that has more to do with, and the average Jewish is like over $100,000. It's like $120,000, right? So a lot of that has to do with culture, I think. Right?
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely a family tradition in the Hispanic culture that might lend to some of the lower crime rates, considering they have over twice the population of the Black community.
Right.
You would think that because they are also in rougher areas, and they make less than Caucasians, Asians, and Jewish families,
right,
that they would also have twice the crime rate of the Black community. But they don't. The Black community has, again, they make up for, I think it's something like 40% of incarcerations. And so, it's interesting.
That's very interesting.
It's
very
interesting.
Psychological.
Yeah. It's interesting because, again, a lot of the narrative just compares black and white, but you're leaving out literally all these other, you're leaving out
3/4 of the equation.
Yeah, East Asian, Indian, Hispanic, the Hispanic culture, the Jewish community, the Native American community. I mean, and I think overall the idea that the fatherless home, I think that's something that is affecting all of these communities and these cultures. It's just manifesting differently, right? Like I think there is a link between the high crime rate between young Black men and the school shooter epidemic in the white community. I think the common denominator in both situations is the fatherless home.
Yeah.
And no one's talking about that. Yeah,
sure.
and no one's talking about that. And so I think also people who go into positions like police officers simply to be authoritative bullies also have problems either with a poor masculine role models in their life, or no masculine role models in their
Right.
life, and so they start to fill the void of what makes a man a man. And if they don't have good role models or they don't have a good relationship with their father, they start to create whatever might look like a man in their mind, and that's going to come from entertainment, and that's going to be what? The cowboy mentality, this
Right.
Call of Duty crap. And so what happens? It manifests as these over-authoritative, insecure little men behind a gun and all of the laws we have.
Yeah.
Right.
It's very, very
Right.
true.
And so I think there is this common denominator issue in culture that it's manifesting in many different ways. And I think if you start to address that, if you start to cure that disease, we might see some of these symptoms start to fade.
Yeah.
So that's my analysis. Who knows? I'm a nobody, so I could be wrong.
I
But
liked it a lot. It's a very good way to think about it.
No,
too,
it is for sure.
well,
Not something you would normally think about too, because a lot of people get offended over anything you say. So, but it's just the facts. So.
Well. Some people can argue if it's the facts, but I think
I think it
to your point, I think maybe why it might click or why some of it might make sense, and some of it goes back to the rise of positive femininity, right?
Right.
And it's like in my analysis, I think it was going so well, and then it started to overshoot. And it started to unbalance things. Somewhere in there, things became unbalanced.
Yeah.
And I think positive femininity or the power of femininity started to attack masculinity, right? Or it felt like it had to
Yeah.
in order to keep what it had gained. And I think the problem is it attacked positive masculinity. It didn't attack negative masculinity. And so we have kind of like, everyone's familiar with The Lion King, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we've sort of killed Mufasa.
Mm.
And with the emptiness of Mufasa, right? Lion King is like an archetypally true story, right? So it's kind of like what happened in the age after Mufasa's death.
Yeah.
The negative masculinity rose and filled the void, right?
Yeah,
And
for sure.
and it pushed the sun
Yeah.
of positive masculinity out away from culture, away from society, pushed it to the outskirts. Kind of like what you were saying, what we're doing with white men right now. We're like pushing them to the outskirts and going, society doesn't need you anymore, right?
Yeah.
Just like Scar told Simba to get the hell out, run away, right? Never
Yeah.
return.
It's a funny reference.
But then what happened, right? Scar let the hyenas eat before the lionesses, right?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, and the Pride Lands went to shit because we let negative masculinity rise, right? The thing that would never rule had to con its way into power.
Yeah.
And so that's what I think it's gonna bite. I think I see that. This is like really going off topic, but I really do see that in what's the words I'm looking for here? The disappointment in women, in men, right? Women are disappointed in men more often, I think, now more than ever.
Yeah.
And I think we get confused with, well, now women have a voice. It's like, well, I don't
Women
know.
have had a voice for a while.
We
so.
measured their happiness back in the 1960s, and they reported that they're being a lot happier than they are now. So I find that very, very interesting, right?
Yeah.
That is interesting. Yeah.
And so I wonder what it all means, right? I wonder what it all means. This might be a whole other topic to
that
have.
is completely yes.
But I do think a lot of it is tied into what we're seeing with the crime rates and the Black Lives Matter. I do think a lot of it's kind of tied in, and so, yeah. So I guess anything else you guys want to say on the Black Lives Matter movement for now?
I'm over it right now.
For sure.
Not that I don't support it, though. I don't want anybody to think that. I don't think anybody here does not support it, by the way. I just want to make that clear, because people might be like, wow.
The All Lives Matter people are also, they're cringe, okay?
Yeah,
like,
100%.
oh God, okay, just to get that out there, right? Somebody's listening in so far, it's like they probably have assumed we're All Lives Matter people and shut it off a while ago.
We never said
we
that
are
once,
not.
So.
Yeah, I for sure am not an All Lives Matter person. I think that phrase is cringe. I think it's really weird. I think you can criticize the BLM movement properly without like denoting what lives matter and what lives don't.
Yeah.
And it is just like a passive aggressive. It's passive aggressive. It's not articulate.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So.
for sure. Just
But
crazy.
yeah. Alrighty, we'll end it with that. Thank you guys for listening, and catch us next time.
Bye.